thank you, Ricardo, for being here. Thank you for being at the 22nd Portuguese Atlantic Youth Seminar. It is great to have you as a speaker at the closing ceremony. It is really nice to see that the Parliament, as you are a member of Parliament, can be connected to the seminars for us. Youth Seminar, it's great to have you here. Let me just ask you, knowing the fact that your background is in medicine and knowing the fact that you've been advocating for issues of global health, let me specifically ask you, how can global health be a partner to promote better global security?
Well, thank you, Amish. It was a true honor to be here today with such enthusiastic young supporters of the Atlantic Alliance. And to say that looking at my background and my experience, we can understand very clearly that global health not only can be worked side by side with the defense and security, but it is an integrated part of it. The truth is, we've seen in our generation many examples of what could possibly escalate into more serious situations. I'll give you a few examples, as I did during our session. Bird flu a few years ago, or SARS, or after that Zika, and one of the most scariest ones, Ebola. If any of these would have exploded in Europe, for example, to proportions beyond the control of nations and of the member states of the European Union, the truth is we still do not have the capabilities and the institutionalized measures to be able to contain and control. And not being able to do so, the truth is these diseases do not know borders. They will become cross-border issues with terrible, terrible consequences for the people on the ground. They will lead to resources scarcity, which will lead to lack of basic means of survival, which then can lead to serious defense and security compromises that at the end of the day can open the door then to major threats and opening an opportunity for institutionalized terrorism, for example. And so we objectively need to do more to include the global health issue within the global security and defense issue. But I also would like to add to that the need to understand how security and defense is critical for us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. The UN SDGs have the view and the vision to put all countries in the world on the path of sustainable development. Doing so by not leaving anyone behind, which means we have to combat inequalities, we have to combat population vulnerabilities, and this is critical if we want to make sure that our societies grow, prosper, and do so in a peaceful manner. This is basic knowledge for anyone who wants to work in security and defense. If you're not able to fight against the inequalities, you will end up always with problems of security and defense. Look at many of the conflicts in the world. The beginning is always inequalities. And so hopefully NATO, where I believe we all share these common values across the Atlantic, we are capable not only of securing our people, but also of understanding of how important we are as global players in promoting global health, in promoting global security, and in promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. And hopefully member states, even of the NATO alliance, understand that they need to invest more to make sure that we are continuously safe and that we, in our generation, we don't have to live in times of conflict.
Okay, I totally agree when you say that institutions such as the United Nations should promote a program, a clear message, picking up main problems and main issues that we should focus. I couldn't know, as you also said on your speech, on our ceremony, as you said right now, the 17 SDGs are definitely a challenge for us. I want to ask you clearly, do you think that should there be any more comprehensive approach within the SDGs and within the relationship between NATO and United Nations in terms of prevention of this disease. Would you think that it's still lacking any sort of knowledge on how important it is to fight this disease? Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't agree more on this, and the truth is we're still far from where we have to be to reach those 2030 goals. And I think that NATO, which has been observed in many efforts around the world in protecting us from terrorism, in working actively on cybersecurity and cyber defense, but also in fighting in conflicts and in areas and serving populations beyond our traditional mission, like when doing the work in Somalia with piracy. So NATO is clearly working in so many different fields that I honestly feel that global health has not been put as a top priority. And that is a misfortune in the sense that when it hits us in the face, it'll hit hard, and we can't react without terrible consequences that we will not be able to avoid. So I couldn't agree more that NATO has to include this into their agenda as a priority. But moreover, I would say that, and agreeing with you, that NATO can play an active role with the United Nations. And not only with the United Nations, with regional governments around the world, starting with the European Union, European Commission, but also with North America, and working actively in the global perspective of peace and security, but also in terms of sustainable development. Understanding that you cannot have good health without peace and security. You cannot have housing without peace and security. You can't even have prosperity without peace and security. It is the common basis to everything else, and through which sustainability can actually foster. And that should be an integral part of all of the SDGs across the board. And NATO can play an active role promoting that message, but also implementing that vision on the ground.
Definitely. I also think that there's so much to be talked and walked through. We don't need to talk the talk. We need to walk the walk.
And if I may, Amish, the truth is that I think many people agree with this, but the truth is also that member states, many of them of the alliance, are not sufficiently committed when it comes. They agree on the words, but when it comes to the resources needed to do so, they're not willing to invest more. And populist movements, as was discussed in one of the panels here during the week, have led to actually politicians being against NATO, sometimes just for the political gain that having an anti-international institution approach has. And we have to have politicians that have the courage not to do what is simply an easy vote win, but to do what is right.
Exactly. And having you said that, I couldn't tell and I couldn't express my gratitude for you to being here, because it is for us, for youth, it is a strong message when we see a young parliamentarian coming to the closing ceremony and telling in this interview that we need to accomplish more. We need to focus on things that are not popular, but that are for the good sake of our humankind. And it is really motivating. Thanks for being very open and very extrovert to being here, and thanks also for being Yata Portugal friendly, and for knowing that you were addressing a youth that wants to do more, and above all, the important thing is that we actually accomplish things, and it is great to have the support of a young parliamentarian. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you can count on me.
Yes, and hope to see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.